Huck Middeke is a specialist in nature connection, wilderness and survival skills, and sustainability. Huck has taught me a lot about what true sustainability means and requires. And I think his message of a low-tech, simple, minimalistic lifestyle is an important one for the public to hear. In this interview, we explore subjects such as survival, the 6 survival priorities, and how well those are covered in our modern lifestyles. We also give various tools on how to start approaching a more sustainable life. Other subjects include circle of awareness, circle of disturbance, full moon, full stop, Nomad Town, and how living in a yurt has been for the past 4.5 years for Huck. Here is Huck Middeke.
Hello.
Hello, Huck. We're sitting on a little sofa, but where are we exactly?
We are here, place called Eastern Finland by our species, Joensuun to be specific, and about 7 kilometers from the city center, in my home.
And your home is, I know that you don't see your home in a special way.
Of course, it's my home, so it's special. In a way, for me, it's like special, but yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, yeah, but I think many people would in another sense also see your accommodation solution basically as special. And we're inside the yurt to reveal the secret.
Yeah, we're in the yurt. Yeah, like a yurt is like a nomadic shelter. So it's like a tent, but you have like some, somehow it reminds me less of a tent than of a building somehow, but it's a mixture in between. So the walls are made of fabric and also wood, these trellis walls. There's wool in the walls, or part of the, like this layer here, it's wool, like felt. And yeah, it's a relatively lightweight structure, possible to take down in about 3 hours, like just the yurt, and put it up again in the same time. Like with a couple of people who have done it before, you can put it up and down in short time. So, and for this land that I'm renting, it was a criteria that whatever I'm building here needs to be mobile, that I can, that it disappears when I'm moving out from here. And the house that is on the land is not in a shape to live in, and yeah, so I chose the yurt. It was something that was available at that time for me with my, like I thought about tiny house on wheels. I would have loved to find some little cottage, some Moomin or something, but of course it wasn't mobile. And then, like, since I didn't find any place suitable where I could move in directly, like some nice Moomin, then I decided, okay, then I kind of increase my options by like that I provide the shelter myself, and then I can find lands that I can rent and put my shelter on. So then I found this land and had decided that, okay, it could be a yurt, it could be a tiny house on wheels, something mobile. And then the tiny house on wheels was like too expensive, or it would take too long time to build. Like, it's not really that difficult to build, but like it would have taken not too long time to build, and the yurt was available straight away, like pretty much. So I decided to buy the yurt, and yeah.
And it's getting close to 5 years now.
Yeah, actually, like the last time I had counted it wrong, but like actually it's now the 5th winter, so I moved in August 5 years ago. So next August it will be 5 years.
Mm. And how would you say 5 years living in a yurt? Also, this winter has been quite cold. December, January, a lot of nights around -30. How would you describe living in a yurt, and has it been challenging with colder temperatures of the winters, or?
I wouldn't say challenging. Like, it's a challenge if you don't know how to handle it. So, but the nice thing with the yurt is like the yurt kind of teaches you over time how to live in a yurt. So you don't need to know how to live in a yurt. When you start living in a yurt, the yurt will teach you. And so, like there are, like of course it requires a little bit more firewood to heat it. And maybe it requires 1 or 2 more blankets in the night. Like if you don't keep the fire on in the night, of course you can keep the fire on in the night and like put an alarm every, I don't know, 1.5, 2 hours and put some more wood on the stove, or you can just let the fire go out and then it's like, let's say -30 outside, you can have +30 inside. It's totally possible. Like you just heat it and you can get that temperature. I usually prefer something between 12 and 18 degrees, like over 18 it's feeling a bit too warm. And then I like also to have the insulation close to the body, so even when I'm not sleeping I might be like sitting here on this sofa under 1 or 2 blankets, so I have this little microclimate. It's and if I don't heat the yurt, don't keep the fire on during the night, it can be -degrees here in the morning inside. But that's somehow this misconception that like, -degrees, it's too cold for me. Like it doesn't mean that I am cold, right? So like for example, it means when I get up I put on like this very warm fluffy trousers and this very warm fluffy jacket and put on the stove and go back to bed. So and then like half an hour later it's already warm enough to walk around without the fluffy jacket and the fluffy trousers. And like I don't like being cold, and I'm never cold here. In the 5 years I have never been like uncomfortably cold or so. That being said, I do prefer to be on the cool side of comfy instead of being on the warm side of comfy. Yeah.
When I arrived here yesterday, it was probably over 20 degrees.
Yeah, it easily happens when it's like so warm outside. Like now we have outside something between 0 and +5, I guess. So and then like it can, especially if you want to, I don't know, fry some food and you have the stove on a higher how do you say, volume or output, then it can easily get quite warm, especially in the kitchen area close to the stove. Like it's usually a bit cooler here in the north. We are sitting in the north, by the way. The kitchen is in the south.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know. But yeah, I was in a t-shirt quite fast when I came. I'm not staying in a big sort of house, and seems like it's much easier to heat actually than many big houses, for example.
Yeah, and also like in a big house, if you're away for let's say a week and you don't heat at all, like if you have the bad fortune that there are water pipes in the house, then you have a problem with frozen and broken pipes. Otherwise you just need to keep heating even if you're not home, like to avoid damage to the building. And this one here, it can just no issue with like if you just don't heat it, and it still heats up fast. Like the house, it takes time to then heat up, and this heats up fast. So but I think that is not specific to you, that's specific to small shelters in general.
Yeah. Something I observe also immediately coming here is a sense of groundedness. And we talked about this a bit, and I think 2 factors at least that are creating that feeling is being close to the ground. You don't have too many chairs or anything like that here. You're close to the ground, and also the roof is relatively low, at least here in the periphery.
Mm.
And the other thing that you talked about is the round shape. There's no corners, which is sort of associated with this more yin, feminine kind of almost like a soft feeling rather than having very sharp angles. And
I often call it like a cocoon, you know, it's a bit like a being in this safe space, like almost like a spaceship also, like that.
yeah,
You could imagine, like, you know, when you look out from the roof, like, and you only see space, you can imagine like you're in some kind of spaceship. And I think what also matters is somehow the colors of the wood and the wool. It's like kind of soft colors. So, yeah. And I guess like it's somehow, you know, the sitting on the ground is like also, it feels like a lot better for me when I was like now visiting like my mother's place some time ago. Like it's like sitting on chairs all the time, and I could feel like my legs are swollen there. Like it doesn't feel like, you know, because when you sit on a chair you don't move around so much, but when you sit on the ground you might change your position more often, and I find it a lot more like, yeah, it somehow it feels healthier to sit on the ground than sitting on chairs. Like,
I wonder when chairs came to be. When was our inner wilderness derived from us? Maybe we don't need to go too deep into that, but it's true. I fully agree. Being close to the ground is somehow natural and grounding.
I've often been thinking that here, because it's sand soil here, I could actually skip the insulation on the ground because the ground doesn't freeze from the sides. There's no moisture in this sand soil. So it's like kind of a warm soil in itself, and you don't actually need the insulation. So I've been thinking it would be really nice to just live directly on the open floor. Like it's something I really enjoy when we have the, like in this, like there's this season of using the outside kitchen. So and when using the outside kitchen, like, you know, food spills doesn't matter if something falls down. Like, you know, you don't really need to clean up or something. And like this, you know, walking barefoot directly on the earth is like the biggest pleasure. Like and so like, but I didn't know when I designed the floor that I would find a place with sand soil. So that's why I prepared it for also being working on clay or rock or something. So
yeah, and something also, this is fully organic materials, I've understood.
yeah, except the very outside layer is like a polycotton, but it's also still to some Ecotech standards, and of course the ropes here that are synthetic ropes.
Yeah.
But the wool is organic wool. The wood is like birch and rowan from Finland, and yeah, I had to, because I have a construction permit for this, so I went to get this rakennuslupa for having this, living in a yurt here on the place, and it's actually like quite helpful to have this rakennuslupa. But to get this construction permit, I needed to you know, get like the certificates of the fabrics, like, you know, what is their behavior in fire, like fireproofness and that kind of things. So I had to get all this information from the manufacturers of the fabrics. But no problems, all good.
And this is, you've bought the yurt, you've built the foundation or the floor basically.
The floor, the furniture, and like somehow the stove setup I put together with some pieces that I could get and was provided with, like a mixture. But the roof and the walls, like, is something I bought really. Yeah.
For living in a yurt, you've got some solutions for energy here.
Yeah, like of course energy for, you know, heating the space, heating the food, heating the water. I'm actually using wood, like local wood right from here, but it's still like probably most of my energy use is probably wood. Like when you look at how much kilowatt is in a cubic meter. So, but for the electricity, I have like 2 solar panels. They are like third hand, so they used to be on some big how do you call it, solar park, and then they were like used by a friend of mine on his mobile home, and then he gave them to me, and so for most of the year I'm actually using only one of the panels, because 2 of the panels makes more electricity than I can take. And now in the springtime, or actually this winter, there has only been like about 1 week where there was not enough light to get electricity from the solar panels. So I have this like an exercise bike that I have added something so that I can, like I added a motor, and I'm spinning the motor with the wheel of the exercise bike, so it makes DC voltage. There's no battery for in-between storage, so it's like going directly to like 5 USB ports. So I can charge 5 USB devices same time with muscle power, and you know that USB devices, they just charge slowly. So like you can't just charge a phone by adding more voltage that it will be charged faster. It just have this 5-volt charging, and so that means it's extremely little effort. It's like going downhill in the first gear with a bicycle. It's like really almost annoying how little effort it is. Like you would wish that it would be a little bit more effort and a bit faster. So, but now it's like hardly any effort, and it just takes 1.5 hours to charge a phone. But then I charge like, you know, the phone, the headlamp, listen to the radio, and charge 2 power banks same time. So and I can read a book at the same time. So it's like it doesn't feel like work. You know, it's just like takes some time, but it's also, when you have a good book, the time goes by quite fast. And then I use the power banks for the next days to charge my phone from. If I would not use the phone so much, I would probably get by with like doing that once a week to just, you know, have enough to always listen to radio, because radio, like listening to radio, doesn't take much energy at all. So you can run a radio from the power bank almost a week or so, like this small radio that I have. And then, like, you know, the headlamp, if it's on the lowest setting, like, which most of the time it's enough for this kind of close range work, like, you know, or even when I make firewood or do something, move outside, like, it's still usually on this lowest setting of less than 10 lumens, so you can get with one headlamp charged through a whole week quite easily. So yeah, that are all electric devices that I own. Everything is powered with USB.
So during the darkest winter, you cycle about
Every 2 days.
every 2 days for a couple of hours.
Yeah, about 1.5 hours.
1.5 hours.
Yeah. Yep.
That's maybe health-wise also, even if the resistance in the bike is not so.
Yeah, of
so
course
great,
you
it's
move,
nice.
you know,
Yeah.
and of course you do get warm
Yeah.
a bit. So,
Yeah.
but it's like not I wouldn't call it like hard workout or
Yeah.
something.
You had this example of toasters and how much energy they use.
Yeah, it's like ridiculous.
You wanna share how much you would need to cycle to power?
I mean, like in general, like toasters, we consider them like, you know, I guess we don't necessarily consider them as a luxury. Like you find them, you know, you don't need to be like a wealthy person to have a toaster, right? And it's not something that we would call like, oh, look at these people, they have a toaster, you know, like somebody who is like, you know, flying with a private jet, like, you know. So and nowadays we consider them pretty low tech. At some point a toaster was a high tech thing. And at some point a toaster was a luxury, like, you know, it was like something that fancy people had, this electric toaster, or even had electricity. But the toaster, like, you know, the kind of the the lowest energy ones, they consume about 700 watt. And then, like, you know, depending how fast you want it to be toasted and how many you toast at the same time, like it can be probably like over 1000 watt even. So, and like doing 700 watt is like, if you want to do that with muscle power and power it directly without like charging a battery and then using the battery, like it really takes some Olympic athlete to power that.
Yeah.
It's like average person can kind of comfortably do 100 watt and keep that for like several hours. Like, you know, like when you're like cycling, you know, normal bicycle, like it's about the workout, it's about 100 watt the energy output. And so that means either you are 7 times stronger if you want to power the toaster, or you use 7 people, or Olympic cyclist, and like for me that gives it brings it so nicely into perspective, like you know, to make 1 kilowatt hour of electricity with this average, you know, 100 watt output of an average human, you will need to cycle 10 hours, right, to get this 1 kilowatt together. And then people complain that, like, you know, when you buy electricity on the market, that 1 kilowatt hour in the worst times cost over €2. Like, you know, what hourly salary would that be? Like, you know, it's like cycling for 20 cents to per hour. You know, it really puts it into good perspective how much energy is required to run our lives. And of course, like, then the question is, where does the energy ultimately come from, and the resources to provide the electricity? Like, you know, is it actually beneficial? You know, is it actually nice to have a toaster? Or is it like maybe nicer not to have a toaster but a planet in return? You know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how much, like, if I imagine, like, you know, how many toasters are being powered in Finland, like, you know, every morning, and then during the day, like, if we just skip all the toasters, like, I'm pretty sure it's almost a power plant that we could switch off.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to contextualizing our energy usage in a bit later phase, I believe, but you can think about that when you're toasting your resumes in the morning next time. Okay, we've talked about the yurt, but the yurt is also part of something you called Nomad Town.
Yeah, it's a creation. The name was created by another person. But the idea with the Nomad Town is that this is a place where, like, first of all, like, everything here is mobile, so it could be nomadic. Like, more or less, it would still require cars to move everything. Like, you know, moving the yurt, it requires a trailer to transport it. You know, you can't just carry it around, and I don't have like some camel to strap it on. So, but it's mobile in a sense in itself, and also, like, it's a place where people who are living nomadic at times of the year frequently end up spending time. So, like, there are like this you know, like long distance cyclists. Like, I'm in this network called Warm Showers, so it's providing like a shelter place for people who are making this long distance bicycle touring. Then I know some people who are like pretty much living on the road, so they come here sometimes and then spend a few days. And then there are people who come here for a couple of weeks, or even a couple of, like, the longest was 1.5 years, and they kind of move on, like, come here, learn a bit about like the lifestyle, and learn about, you know, find out how they can live, want to live, and at the same time can continue with their whatever average work they do in the city and live here. And then often they move on and start own projects, or move into some eco villages, or continue traveling or so it's kind of like a, not necessarily home base, but like a place where people who are nomadic can, you know, come and spend time. And like, beside this Nomad Town name, like, what kind of my dream or intention with this place is to be for it to be a resilience hub. So resilience is, I don't know if I need to explain what resilience actually means, but a resilience hub is like a place that does not impact too much, and like if, like, let's say there would be electricity breakdown or the water grid would break down, like we wouldn't necessarily be the first to notice that. Right, like, and it wouldn't affect us. We could just continue. We would be resilient to that kind of impacts, and by living in a resilience hub, also we make it less likely that these big, fragile, complex systems, like for example energy systems, that they are overloaded. Right, that there's like less load on them by less people stressing them. So yeah, and in a sense, like, because nobody knew, there's no like, at least my parents didn't show me how to live a sustainable or resilient or sufficient lifestyle, and they didn't know how to do it. Like, so it's really like also a place for exploring and finding out, and learning lessons and making mistakes, and sharing what we learn with others. So it's like a place for exploration, a bit like a stationary expedition. So and yeah, finding out like solutions or approaches that are like solutions of high level sustainability, not just like this, like, oh, this is a sustainable super yacht, like it's, I think that often the word sustainable or sustainability is like highly misunderstood and abused, also misused. So like that, this is a place where we explore stuff that is scalable. And for me, like, for example, living in a yurt is not scalable, but the questions I asked from myself that eventually brought me to the yurt, those questions, they might be scalable, right? Or some ways of thinking that some tools that I use, like not physical tools, but like kind of social tools, like they might be scalable, that can work in other places for bigger communities also, no matter if you live in the city or not. Like I think like this muscle power plant, this exercise bike for making electricity, like it's extremely scalable. You only need a couple of old bicycle parts, and you can make your own electricity. And if you like, even lots of tools, you don't even need to go this detour of electricity. You can also like power a sewing machine or a blender or a mixer or some other tools that rotate. You can power them directly. So these kind of low-tech approaches, like for example, for transforming or even harvesting energy, like from turning wind power into electricity, or turning solar into heating, like a lot of these kind of tools, they are, or approaches, they're very sustainable, scalable. Yeah.
Something that I've learned from you through you call it the Moomin Valley utopia, I believe, which many people, when they're looking into starting an eco village or something reminiscent of what you call the resilience hub, they're thinking about this ideal that it's fully self-sufficient, and it's this little sort of island somehow where it's completely unimpacted by everything that's happening outside of it, and that would be the goal, that the whole rest of the world can fall down and we live in our little Moomin Valley. But what you bring forward with this Moomin Valley ideal, I believe, is that's not the goal. That's not what we're looking for.
No, not for me. And I also think that this Moomin Valley is not a scalable approach. Right, like it's like in wilderness medicine, you need to find a sweet spot between the ideal to real, right? There's an ideal treatment, but you don't have that possibility, so you need to cope with what is actually the reality providing. And then you just need to build splints from sticks instead of the ideal splinting materials also. And like if I think of this kind of Moomin Valley isolated, totally independent small societies, for sure that's ideal. And for sure this is something that we had in our history, right? We had like, you know, little villages here and there, and they would not buy beer but make their own beer, and they would, you know, do very, very little trading, like need, you know, maybe to get some salt and get some oil, but like, you know, they could do everything themselves. And like maybe at some point we will be there, right? Maybe that will be something in the future, that when there is like less humans around, that this is a feasible way of doing things. In the moment, however, I feel that like I'm never independent, you know, I'm still always on the same planet. So if you know, you could say like, well, if I'm here and I can take care of myself and I don't need to buy, you know, food, I don't need to buy electricity, I don't need to buy water, and I have a nice compost system and a closed kind of permaculture, then everything is good. At the same time, like if just, you know, 500 meters down the road, some neighbor is like, you know, eating meat and buying things and flying for holiday, or, you know, using like, I don't know what kind of electricity and driving what kind of vehicle, like, you know, if there's a person with like, or a whole society with huge footprints, like, you know, just this neighbor eating meat imported from Brazil, or being fed like by food that has grown or being grown on places where there used to be rainforest, and now we burn down the rainforest. That impact of the burning rainforest in Brazil, it has impact on the climate here, right? So it's not possible to actually be, you know, to kind of take yourself out of the system. So that's one thing. Kind of in one direction, you will always be impacted, right? It's like, you know, it's climate change, it's pollution, it's like, you know, so many factors, like it's microplastics in the environment. It's like other species are dying, you know, that you depend on here, right? You need the mosquitoes to, you know, that the male mosquitoes, they are pollinating, the female mosquitoes are, you know, like, or in general, the mosquitoes are like kind of the big food stock in the food chain, like, you know, small in size but big in numbers, and like you have all kinds of birds that come here because of that, and like the whole ecosystem here is built on the mosquitoes. So if there's like some others behaving unintentionally, usually in a way or unknowingly, that affects the mosquito population, it will affect your survivability. So that is kind of going in the one direction. In the other direction is also like, I feel that when you figure out how to live with less impact, you know, when you figure out how to solve problems in your community, right, how to communicate in better ways, you know, like you have a responsibility to share this knowledge, right? There's a responsibility to have communication between the two, and I'm saying there is not those two, right? It's always one planet, and it doesn't matter if we call it flat or round, you know, it's still the same common ground, and we are connected on this, and we need to figure out how to live on this, and there is a necessity, there's a huge benefit, and there's a huge possibility of communication, and so or interaction, let's say, not only communication but in general interaction, interdependencies also. So I'm not saying that it's like we shouldn't learn, like, you know, even living primitive lifestyles, right? Like even like living in Stone Age tools, technology. Like I think it's extremely important that some of us are doing this, you know, and feel like a passion for this, and, you know, explore and preserve and remember, and the same with this kind of self-sufficiency. is like extremely important because it brings the impact down of our society on our ecosystems. At the same time, it's not a scalable approach because we have already like so many people living in cities and having shelters there. Like if they would all move to the countryside, we wouldn't know how to do that. We would need a lot more resources to, you know, build shelters for them and or get rid of a lot of people, which is not really you know, a favorite option. So like we need to kind of live with what we have. We need to pick us up where we are. And one of the things is that we have global communication, you know, and need to use that. And so, yeah, I guess you know what I mean. Yeah, so I feel it's like really important to understand ourselves as one community and then like have our little local like neighborhoods where we can, you know, take more direct action. Yeah.
So basically, in an interconnected system, there is no true independency, or
Yeah.
true self-sufficiency doesn't exist when everything is connected and everything affects everything else.
Yeah, you cannot isolate yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's not totally wise to isolate yourself because you will always be impacted, and you have a responsibility to impact in a positive way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and a possibility, of course, and it's beneficial for you to, you know, it's beneficial when you are living on the countryside to share, like, you know, how you take care of your electricity, right? It's like beneficial to share this so that others can like, think, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds like, makes sense, like no electricity bill, and you know, it's like some things that also work in the cities. Yeah, and other way around, there's things that work in the cities that could work better in the countryside. Yeah, and then we need to look into like, you know, what copy paste solutions we can bring in from one place to another. What can, you know, what ideas can we implement in our neighborhoods that work elsewhere already without having to reinvent the wheels? And for that we need the communication. And of course, like when you look at the total, like, you know, when you go into the survival priorities, like, you know, electric communication is not a survival priority in itself. It's actually a detour with efficiency losses. You know, when using electricity in the first place, it's a detour with efficiency losses. But it might be like a worthwhile investment to be able to communicate like really fast, especially when we have like a bit of a hurry to take care of our situation. Yeah.
We'll go to survival priorities pretty soon. To linger on Nomad Town a bit more, it is an open invitation for people to come and learn about sustainable ways of living, and you have actually visitors from all around the world who are curious about the way you live and learning about low-tech solutions, could you say, for sustainability.
Yeah, like when you say like that there's an open invitation for people to come here and learn, to me that doesn't mean to come here and be taught by me, right? Like come here and find out, right? Participate and find out. Yeah. Like there are people who want to come here and really be taught and learn, and then it's more like really a course, and I'm like, you know, involved in like, you know, creating some kind of curriculum and a daily schedule, and then it's actually, you know, kind of work for me. It goes beyond like kind of normal everyday life. And then there is people who just come here, and I say like at least 2 nights, and bring your own shelter, bring your own plate, bring your own cup, bring your own spoon ideally, and then like yeah, kind of tag along, right? Participate. Don't expect something, like just be curious, and yeah, that has been now working quite nicely like this. And kind of the reason why this open invitation exists is because simply this is a place, right? I'm not owning this. as a renter, like as the one who is renting that, of course I have some kind of responsibility to, you know, not cut all the trees or something, or not burn whatever is on the area, burn it down also. But I wouldn't see myself like as kind of the landlord, or like the, you know, like the, how do you call it, the mayor of the Nomad Town or something. You know, I'm just one person who is living here, and I happen to have been living here all the time now since it existed. But you know, when there's other people here, like I think that they have as much to say, and they should feel as, you know, free to host, you know, and invite their friends, or, you know, and of course there is like some, like, let's say, authority, but this authority is more like by knowledge or skill. Like, you know, I might, you know, be the right person to ask about something because I simply have some knowledge about the place, but it doesn't mean that like I'm, you know, generally have more to say here. Also, you know, I when there's like, you know, a group of people living here, and in the summer it can be like, when there are camps that can be here 20 people here, or like kind of the longest that we had living here kind of for a longer period of time was 8 people in one summer. And then of course, like, I'm, you know, just, you know, as much subject to others' decisions and like anyone else. So like, so at least in the moment it's an open invitation, and yeah, it also of course then always depends on like how people behave, right? Like, you know, some people, like, if it's like you know, for the whole project it should be beneficial for everyone involved. So if somebody wants to come here, you know, it's not very beneficial for this project and the community if somebody is like, you know, banging on the drum all the time and smoking weed. You know, it's like not beneficial, like, in my opinion. You know, it's like, I'm not saying that, like, you know, smoking weed is bad, but you know, I wouldn't want to see it happening here in public. And I also have like come to the conclusion that, you know, smoking weed is like responsible for a lot of good ideas to come into, you know, to be thought, but also it's responsible for a lot of good ideas not to be put into reality, right? So it's I would say like a bit more of a sober place. Yeah, like, it doesn't mean that there is no parties happening here where some people might use, you know, like have a sauna beer or two, or, you know, have a whiskey by the fire or so, but like it's really like, you know, not a, I don't know, like, of course it's like, you know, sometimes like chilling in the hammock or on the trampoline, you know, but it's like not this place to come. Like, for me
it's a place to learn, grow.
Yeah, it's a place to grow and to live, and you know, it's not like this, like, oh, I go glamping now, you know, something like, oh, like, what do we do in the holiday? Like, it's like, to me, it's really like, to me, there's always this sense of being on an expedition. And when you're on an expedition, you don't do foolish things, you know, it's a serious business. So, yeah, somehow like that.
To me, that's highlighting the social element of a resilience hub, where people who are willing to immerse themselves to the realities of nature, they can come here and work together to understand them. And like you said, that there's no sort of true authorities, that you're not the mayor, but the mayor is the environment, it's nature that sort of gives you the playing ground, or playground is maybe not the best term, but sort of the rules of what works and what doesn't, and that's the authority that's respected together.
I would agree with that, yeah. And of course it's like, you know, a big of a learning thing also. Like, it's like getting rid of old habits, and like when I look at, you know, how life and thrival and survival as a natural being in nature works, is like, you know, it needs to be super efficient. and like no waste of energy, and like really this also the limits of what is enough, right? The sufficiency perspective. And so a lot of parts of my life, they're like, you know, totally not efficient, right? Like I'm I don't know, like sometimes I might feel like, oh, I'll take the bus into town, right? Or like also like when I think just about space, the survival priority shelter, right? There's the local library that you can access between, I think, 7 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock in the night. You can access this with your library card. This space is always heated. You know, there is like water, toilet, everything is there. And when I'm there, I don't need to heat here. And to my knowledge, like the city of Joensuun is like going in a quite okay direction with where the electricity source comes from, and the space is heated anyway, right? Also, the bus is driving anyway. It's not driving because of me. But of course, like if I wouldn't use the bus sometimes, maybe they would think like, maybe we could get by with a smaller bus, you know, I don't know. So it's like always like compromises and also, I guess, maybe not being too judgmental with myself. Like, you know, for example, like it is sufficient to just eat food, be warm, dry, and safe. For the winter, to get through the winter, it's enough to actually, you don't need a yurt of this size. You don't need to have a stove of that, you know, wood consumption. You know, it's like really like somehow also a bit of a compromise. You know, I want that there is a good place for like when my child comes visiting also, that it's like, you know, warm for the child also, and comfortable, and that there is electric lights and not just me burning some sticks or I don't know what. So it's like, it's compromises. Yeah. And it's by far like, even when I do like some kind of calculators, like you know, footprint calculators, like according to the footprint calculators, I do not have a personal overshoot day, right? So my personal overshoot day would be kind of next year in April somewhere. Personally, like that would actually mean, by kind of the common standards, that I'm living a sustainable lifestyle. I don't agree with that. Like, I think my lifestyle is not sustainable. You know, it's like, it's still like using fossils, it's still using money, it's still creating rubbish. You know, so by that measure, it's not a sustainable lifestyle.
Let's take a little step back. Let's talk about survival.
Yeah.
You're an survival expert. Have been called by some, at least.
Yes.
I could call you a survival expert. You have something called the 6 survival priorities. What are those, and based on those, would you say that we are in a survival situation?
Yeah, so kind of it could be a nice exercise for the listeners now to think like, what are actually those 6 survival priorities? Like, can I get them together? Like, food and water is usually quite easy. Like, maybe we also think that like air comes into mind, that like, yeah, of course we need air, and then like we need shelter from, you know, but then the last 2, like, I mean, of course they're in no specific order, right? Like, you know, when you're falling from an aeroplane and you don't have a parachute, you have a shelter problem. Food is not your priority in that moment, right? And the other 2 is like to health, like we need to be healthy, right? And of course food and water, they help to be healthy, but also like sleep is necessary to be healthy. To you know, keep your body fit and move is necessary to be healthy. So like health, you know, you can be born in a nice shelter, and you know, there's food around you, there's water, there's good air around you, but if you're not healthy at birth, your survival is threatened. And then if you in that moment don't have anybody there who actually gives you the food, then you have a community problem. So community is like the other, so it's also a survival priority. Like that's kind of also going back to what we had before. Like it's not possible to survive alone. Like especially not as a species, right? Like maybe as an individual, like if you're stranded on some deserted island, no matter how unlikely that scenario is to happen to most of us, like you can get by alone for some time, but eventually like you will probably then die because of lack of community, right? You might have a health problem and there's nobody who can help you with this health problem. Like it might be that you break your ankle and you can't get food anymore, right? So community can always kind of be a backup for a lack of the other five. So community is a really important one to take care of also. So the question, like, are we in a survival situation? Like maybe first of all going into what actually is a survival situation. Survival situation is when one or more of these priorities are not sufficiently covered, right? If you're like, sealing off a place completely, eventually you will breathe all the oxygen and you will die because you run out of air. Yeah. So maybe in that moment you still have enough air. You don't feel like you have a survival situation, but that actually is the moment when you should maybe try to, your brain still works, right? There's still enough oxygen in the air. That should be the moment where you should actually think that, eventually I will run out of air. This place is completely sealed. Maybe it's time to figure out how to get some oxygen in here or take some carbon out of the air, right? So that is like a survival situation. Air is the example in that case. And it's actually interesting because you already are in a survival situation, because it's like everything is there that like in that moment when you find yourself in this sealed box, it's already clear that you will run out of oxygen unless you do something now, right? So you already are in a survival situation. The survival situation does not start when you actually don't get enough oxygen in your brain anymore. So usually these survival situations, I differentiate in two different ones, like type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is the one where you really know that, okay, now I am in a survival situation, right? You have an accident and you see a lot of blood is leaving your body, right? You know that like your survival for the next minutes, hours, days is depending on your action now. The type 2 survival situation is like, in a way, the more serious one, because you don't notice it in that moment, right? You usually notice it when it turns into, when you cannot compensate anymore, right? When you are not able to absorb the stresses anymore. And the survival situation type 2 is like usually you have many priorities, but they're insufficiently covered, right? Like you don't notice that, hey, I don't have any food. Right, like, and there is like this, like very typical example of this, like soldiers fighting in the trenches. So they do get some sleep, they do get some health care, they have some community, they do get some water and get some food. So, every now, like, they don't have the feeling like, hey, I have no food, right? Because every now and then there is food and they are like really full. But altogether over, period of weeks and months, like they are losing weight. They when you don't sleep enough, like it's affecting your immune system. You're more likely to make mistakes, and then at some point your body is not compensating anymore, and then it's going downhill really fast. So with the type 2 situation, you can do something early on to avoid it going actually really bad, but it's of course already bad before you notice it, especially if you don't notice it. So when we look at the survival priorities, the 6 priorities, like, for example, like for me, food is always a very easy example, because we feel like, okay, we have easy access to food, right? We go to the supermarket and from, 2 hours of work, salary, paid work, we can probably buy enough calories to cover the whole week, You know, there are some very calorie rich foods, and we can, like, you know, depending on our salary, but we can, you know, pretty much cover at least the energy content of the whole week. Of course, if you then look also into vitamins and other nutrients, then maybe 2 hours is not enough. But like, just for the moment, like, let's only look into the energy content. So we feel like it's really easy to get our energy demand covered, you know, that our bodies stay alive. And when we then like spend, like, with food doesn't only need to be sufficiently nutritious, it also needs to give us more energy back than what we invested. So if you keep running, you know, behind your food and try to hit it with a stick, and you don't catch the food, and that goes on day after day, and maybe sometimes you catch the food, but, you know, like, every day you run and run and run, and only sometimes you are successful, you will feel very soon that your body is getting lighter and lighter and weaker, right? And you get headaches and muscle cramps, and you cannot run anymore even. And so, like, the degradation of the body, you will notice really fast. So this energy input-output balance, it needs to be in our favor, right? So when we are looking at most people in Finland or Western societies, like, it's quite easy to get a lot of energy food. Yeah, and the energy investment we personally need to take might be really low. Like, it might be sitting by a desk, steering some wheels, or pushing some buttons by the, you know, shopping trolley, by the cashier, I mean, and then by the oven. So, and if we, like, just look at this and we feel like, okay, mostly we are sitting and we get a lot of energy back, then we get really big people. Like, even the poor people are big, right? Like, the money poor people have, like, you know, it's not that money poor people in Finland are starving to death, you know. That's not the dominant symptom of the poverty. So the problem, however, is that the food, the acquiration, like, the of the food doesn't start by us going to the supermarket, right? It's like that, you know, it's the same way as electricity doesn't come from the wall plug, you know. Electricity comes from, you know, some energy source that needs to be converted, and so on. So, and the same with the food, like, we have outsourced it. Our personal energy investment might be really low, but we have outsourced the processing, the transportation, the catching, whatever, the farming of the food. We're not doing that ourselves anymore. So if we think about, like, this, like tuna, it's like, for me, it's like a great example, because you can still buy tuna here in the supermarkets in Finland, and you can see on the package how much energy is in there, right? And it's actually, like, quite a lot of energy. Like, it's I think it's enough energy to lift this whole package like a couple of kilometers high, right? That much energy is in there. But it doesn't say how much energy it took to build the shipyard that built the fishing vessel. It doesn't tell how much energy it took to, you know, to run the fishing vessel, to, you know, of course, the people that work on the ship, they also require energy, but the whole ship, the processing, the construction of the ship, the running of the ship, then the catching of the tuna, the processing of the fish, the transportation, the packaging, the cooling, and all this until it ends up in our supermarket. Like, that energy input is part of the same calculation. It's just outsourced and we don't feed it personally, but it's still part of the same calculation. And to my understanding, like, I don't see any food product in a Finnish supermarket where this energy input-output calculation is working in our favor. It still needs to be positive, right? But I don't see any where it is. So, and when you require more energy than what you get back to get the food, then your survival priority food is not sufficiently sustainably covered. And we can say, well, of course it's working. It's still working, right? Like, the energy comes from somewhere, but where does the energy come from? It's like, you know, like the energy to run the ship is coming from oil, right? The energy that is required to build the fishing nets, you know, the nylon, is again oil. Like, so, like, all the resources, not only energy, all the resources in this chain, like, they're ultimately coming from somewhere. They don't just appear. and this coming from somewhere is like in the cases that we are seeing is like it's coming from out of the planet. It's like taken literally out of the planet, and not only is it taken out of the planet, it's also like used in a way that it is polluting the planet, and like changing the gas contents in the air, or the particles of carbon in the air, which is like, so the costs for this way of living we ultimately cannot pay with money. We can maybe buy cheap tuna and pay someone to provide it, but we cannot pay the costs, the long-term costs of that lifestyle. We cannot pay these kind of fines. We cannot pay that with money. So yeah, just that is one example. Priority food, certainly not covered. And yeah, that's a totally serious thing, especially if we want to, like most people prefer living over suicide. Otherwise they would have committed or would try to commit suicide. And what we are doing is actually suicide. It's negligent suicide, like, by accident. And yeah, that is something that is just one example. And when we look at shelter and water and air, quite similar stories. Yeah.
So the challenge in our survival situation comes from that we are not really connected with the realities that set us into a survival situation. Like in the example that you gave, if you're chasing a rabbit and you chase it until you're very tired, and then you get the rabbit and you get food from it and a certain amount of energy, you're very connected with the reality of that. And you're going to learn quite quickly that, okay, I need to in a certain amount of time, or in a certain amount of within a certain amount of energy usage, I need to catch this rabbit to be able to stay positive in terms of how much work it takes and how much energy I get. But now, since a big part of that work is outsourced to something that we don't see, and it's run by fossil fuels, we had this
or even run by, like, exploiting others, other humans, also like other animals, but like, it's like by other suffering.
Yeah. We had this. We were actually making these nests for the Saimaa ringed seal, Saimaa norpas, to nest in, and we were using this lumikola, this little, and we're wondering, like, wouldn't it be so much more easy to use like just a four-wheeler?
Right.
A mönkiä.
Yeah, like the quad bikes.
Yeah, rather than take 10 people and with the shovels and things, like build this. But actually, like, it's much more efficient for the people to do it. Yeah,
it's often like, I've seen, like, in some, when I was traveling, and I saw in some countries, like, they're making a deep hole, and you have like 30 people with shovels, right? And all the energy for that, is grown on the field nearby, right? So if you come and use some big excavator machine, you can do the same job in, like, what takes them maybe with 20 people 2 weeks, you can do it in 2 hours. And you feel like, well, that's like, it feels like, oh, that's so much more efficient, it's so much faster, and we can sit lazy watching the machine, right? Of course, like, it's like the energy to even like mine the resources to build the excavator machine, and then like the machine itself, when it's using, like, it's still, to lift 1 kilo 1 meter up, you still need the same amount of energy, no matter if you use it by muscle power or by a machine. It still requires the same amount of energy to lift that 1 kilo of soil 1 meter up. And the thing is, like, when you use a machine for that, you also create a lot of excess heat, like waste. Like, there's a lot of, the engine is getting hot, right? You have like friction of the hydraulics, where it's like heat loss. So you need like to input a lot more energy to actually, I don't know what the combustion engine like efficiency is like probably less than 40%, you know, because most of the energy is like turned into heat. So like, and then of course the whole making of the thing. So yeah, of course it uses a lot more energy to use the machine. Yeah, for sure.
This is starting to, I think could be a good point to start moving towards solutions and identifying the root problems here. You said, sort of associated with this, that the big challenge here is that we cannot understand that we are in a survival situation.
We can, of course.
Yeah.
We can, of course,
Yeah.
understand it.
Yeah, but it's many of us don't maybe realize it because we're not fully in touch with the natural world and our footprint in that. You said that the lack of nature connection is at the root of the insustainability that we mentioned.
Yeah, like, I mean, all the things that we, well, maybe not all of them, but what we usually consider as our main problems, like globally, like when we look at, you know, what are the conversations we're having in the news and in the media and around the dinner table, like everything that we call a problem there is actually a symptom. So like climate change is a symptom. Like, yeah, for sure it has, you know, it's a problematic issue, but it's like when you look at it closer, it's like a symptom, you know, and you know, when you go to the doctor and say like, hey, I have this headache here, do you have something to do for the headache? And then like the doctor says like, well, like, here, take this medicine, it helps against headache, and gives you the medicine, and then you take this medicine, and next day like you go back and it's like, well, it doesn't really help, like, you know, the headache is still there, and then the doctor starts giving you, you know, other medicines, and then like eventually tries out something that is like a bit like, you know, testing, you know, like it's not really officially you know, certified yet as a medicine, but maybe it helps, you know, and you start taking some risks, and the doctor never asks like, are you actually sleeping ever? Do you drink water? You know, like the headache is a symptom of something else. It's not a problem in itself. So, and when we are looking at what we are doing in the moment, it's a lot of symptom fighting, right? Dealing with climate change the way we are doing it is like a lot of symptom fighting. So we are talking about like carbon capture. We are talking about like, you know, just as an example for the climate change now. We also talk about like, okay, how can we you know, make mobility like emit less carbon or carbon equivalents. Like there are other gases that are, you know, equally or even worse for the atmosphere than carbon. And so we are looking at like, okay, how can we make, you know, modern technology, like how can we provide, you know, renewable electricity, green electricity. Like, of course, that is like basically trying to fix, you know, a mental problem with a technical solution. Like the mental problem is that we feel that we need to transport ourselves and our stuff so much around. It's our mental problem that we have somehow arrived at this state that we think that we need, in Finland it's floor space average 43 square meters of shelter, yeah, for one person. 43 square meters of shelter, you know, yeah, of course you need a lot of energy to heat that. And if then like everybody wants to live in an apartment alone and have their own kitchen, and then, you know, travel to their parents who live alone in the house they used to live 6 people in it, you know, it's really a problem that is you know, these are all symptoms. And the same is with like poverty, the same is with wars and conflicts, like they're all symptoms. We have like, of course, other like health issues, like you know, be it from noise pollution, be it from, you know, electric radiation that some people are sensitive to. It's like you know, the way we build houses, of course you get mold, you know, it's like, and really the core to it is like lack of nature connection. And nature connection is like also a lack of a purpose, right? If you are nature connected, and nature connected means connection to yourself first of all, because wherever we are is nature, right? There's like wherever we can die, we are in nature. Wherever we need to breathe, we are in nature. So we cannot escape being nature or being in nature. It's always the case. It's not just when we go out on the weekend. You know, some people say, like, oh, on the weekend I like to spend some time in nature. You know, I go get out of the city and go to nature. Like, it doesn't work like this. Like, you know, nature is always. So, and it's not just a place. You know, it's a state. It's like a relationship. It's like, yeah, and so when we are nature connected, it means we are connected with ourselves, with our body. We know what we actually need. We know what feels good to our body. We know, like, you know, that moving feels good, that being outside feels good. We know that not eating too much feels good. We know that what kind of food eating feels good, you know, and we are like connected to our body, and then we don't overconsume, for example, food, or we don't overconsume, let's say, substances like that are, you know, nicotine, alcohol, whatever, like that are poisonous to our body. We don't overload our body. Then the next level of connection is connection with each other, like you and me, the other people around you. Like if I know that my neighbor, you know, has I don't know, an exercise bike to make electricity, and he's only using it every 2 days for 1.5 hours, you know, that means that, you know, if you know that and you're connected enough, that, you know, a lot of other people can use it, right? So one exercise bike can make a lot more electricity than just what one person needs. Yeah. So or it knows that, you know, if my apple tree is you know, providing me enough apples, I will share with my neighbor, and maybe the neighbor shares cherries or whatever, or berries with me. So or we might cook together, or we might share, you know, like one car with 5 neighbors. You know, it's like when we are connected with each other, our impact goes automatically down. And our connection inside, that means also our passion for each other, right? The empathy, it goes up, and we are less likely to want to harm each other. We are less likely to fall into the trap of feelings of anger and hate. So we are less likely to have, like, you know, violent conflicts with each other, because we understand, you know, like you know, if I'm connected with myself, and I'm connected with how much it hurts me when I hit my head, I don't feel so good about hitting someone on the head, right? Because I know it will hurt, and I assume that, like, this other person also, you know, wants to be in peace and wants to feel good, and you know, wants to be loved and seen and heard, and doesn't want to be alone, and so on. So this, like, that is nature connection, right? Connection with each other. And then it's the same, it's like connection with the rest of nature, you know, with everything that is not just the human game. Like it's like knowing that, you know, always so confused when, like, I see like, oh yes, I know that with your lifestyle you want to take care of the climate. It's like, no, you know, that's just a side effect, right? That my lifestyle is not, you know, too harmful for the climate. It's just a positive side effect, but it's not the reason why I live like this, right? So when I'm, you know, spending time outside, and I see that there is, like, you know, in the middle of January or February we have like severe frost and then plus degrees, so you have like these ice layers in the snow, and then, like, the, you know, a lot of species, like other animals, they cannot get through these ice layers anymore. So you have, like, hazel grouse that, you know, die because they cannot seek shelter, or they die because they cannot get out of their shelter anymore, right? They don't have the strength to scratch through this ice layer, and then they are, like, frozen with their head sticking out and die, you know. And that is, like, you know, I don't need to see numbers to understand the effects of climate change. And I, you know, when I see, like, the, you know, like, when I, well, not see, it's like feel, you know, when I feel, like, the joy of life in the rest of nature, but also when I feel the suffering a lot of life has to endure because of my actions, or other humans' actions, like our actions as a community, then, like, I'm very interested not to be part of that. And that is, like, you know, you can call it, like, very empathic, but it's also very selfish, right? Like, because I know, because I feel the connection that I have with the rest of nature, that if the rest of nature suffers, that ultimately I will suffer. So my drive could be ultimately totally selfish, right? I just want to have a good life. So, and if I want to have a good life, I really need to take care of the rest of life, because, you know, that's why I am, right? And that is, for me, this nature connection, it provides a purpose. It provides us a reason why we are. Because, like we are born nature connected. And then, like, we grow up into areas where it's advertised and legal and considered as normal to behave in certain ways that might be less beneficial for the rest of life, or for life in all its diversity. And then we kind of forget this nature connection. And then we start seeing, like, you know, when we are like 30, 40, like, I want to find myself, you know. It's like, then we realize, like, hey, actually, I'm not connected with myself. So, and when we are, like, trying to, where was I? Being born nature connected. Or the why, right? I'm only born, like, I only exist because life in all its diversity makes human life possible, right? So, same way, like the, you know, certain fish is living in a certain lake because the circumstances are favorable for this certain fish to live there. It's fresh water, there's food for the fish, there's shelter for the fish. You know, everything that the fish needs is there. And this is why this fish lives there, and also because at some point some bird, you know, transported some eggs from one lake to another, and then the fish could hatch there, right? So, and in the same way, like, I only am because life in all its diversity, you know, life for, like, the conditions on this planet are favorable for human existence. You know, the conditions of the gas mixture in the atmosphere is favorable, the temperatures are favorable, there's water, everything that we need is there. So this is why we are. And in return, like, this is the same purpose, right? Because, like, this is why I am, this is what I am for. Like, this is my reason and my purpose, is to, for life, to be for life, and to be alive, to be one life, a life, you know. So, and to feel also as, to feel as one, you know, to feel like, oh, I'm this person and there's this other person, you know, we are all in it together. And when we are, like, all in this together and we feel this, then we feel everything that we have in common a lot more than what we have in difference. So when I'm, like, looking at these, like, wars that we are fighting and conflicts that we are having with each other, like, I'm almost amused, you know, like, of course shocked and in a way disgusted. I totally understand it also. At the same time, like, it's like, whoa, we cannot afford to spend energy, time, money, resources on building tanks or cruise ships, right? And in the case of tanks or missiles or guns, to fight each other over self-made borders, right? That are, like, only existing inside the human story. Like, when at the same time we have, like, much bigger issues that we need to solve together, and that would be very beneficial for all of us to, you know, take on together. So, yeah, it gives me this, you know, knowing that we are connected, want it or not, right? That is, like, it gives me a lot of hope. We just need to see that we are connected. We need to feel it. But we are connected. Yeah.
That feeling, I think, is at the core of this. Whenever we open, because I think a big thing with all of this is behavior change, and how do we want what is good? How do we want what is good for us? We might, like, rationally understand many of these things, but how does the movement towards the right direction actually happen? And that's where the feeling is key. That we see, like you had the example of the hazel grouse, like, experiencing something like that touches us in a way that I believe is key in behavior change and moving in the right direction here. As long as we're sort of numb or not connected to to the actual realities of our decision making and our behavior, then
like I think that one of the maybe big problems we have is like that, you know, we want to reduce our impact. We look at the suffering that we are causing to each other, to ourselves, to the rest of nature, and at the same time, like this kind of avoiding suffering, right? Like that is going in the direction of like we need to change. It's a necessity. I find it a lot more beneficial to argue from the perspective of benefits, right? It's like, you know, when you see a pile of shit on your side of the road and you're walking and you see this pile of shit, you think like, maybe I can circumnavigate it in the last moment, or maybe there's like some places in between where I can put my foot, and you feel like, yeah, it's of course necessary not to step in this shit, but you're like maybe not so motivated to even change the complete side of the road. But if there's like, you can see this ice cream kiosk, you know, like this ice cream place on the other side of the road, you know, then you're like, wow, free ice cream, like I go there, right? Free ice cream. And just by the way, without even talking about it, you know, without even looking at it, you circumnavigate the pile of shit. And I find it a lot more motivating and important also to, you know, that we are motivating ourselves and each other, but firstly ourselves, out of the benefits, even if we cannot maybe understand or see the benefits, even if we can only dream or imagine them, because we haven't been shown, you know, how to live like, you know, connected lifestyles, like, and we only talk about the bad and the evil and the suffering in the news, right? We're not talking about like, you know, the people in this like, you know, transition town or eco village that have like, you know, figured out like how to visit a restaurant every day of the week, and that makes it a lot cheaper than cooking your own food, right? Because it's community owned, and it's like based on a solidaric agriculture, you know, where like, you know, no money involved, and you have like nice organic local food, seasonal food, and you're eating it in community, and you can also eat it alone if you want, you know, and you have all these benefits. Those kind of stories, they don't come to the news, right? But they're like a lot more, I don't know, I find it a lot more engaging. You know, this is what motivates me. This is, I want like, wow, why are they so happy? I want some of this. And like, not like, you know, when you see like some bad news, like, you know, some children pictures, starving children, you know, like, I think most time people consume news by scrolling through them. So it's like, you don't want to look at them so much. But when you are told, or you meet your neighbor and the neighbor is like, hey, I have sauna every Wednesday, like, come over, you know, that's positive news, you know.
Yeah, that's really good news. Yeah. I guess that's the question of like the stick and carrot in the sort of like behavioral psychology comes in. Something that I felt helped me understand my relationship to my surroundings and nature was something you called the circle of awareness and the circle of disturbance. Could you explain what these are?
Okay, so basically the circle of disturbance is like how far into the area, but also into the time of your surrounding, are you being noticed, or can you be noticed? So if you know, like drive with a car or sit in an aeroplane, like this noise can be heard really far away, and it can be seen, and there might be still some tracks in the ground long time after you're gone. So this circle of disturbance, like kind of disturbing the baseline, you know, of like how nature usually behaves, you know, that kind of baseline, disturbing the baseline, has a certain size. So if you're like, you know, crawling on all fours, or sitting still, or sleeping somewhere, you know, under a tree in the bush hidden, and you're not making any sounds, this circle of disturbance is really small. Like, you know, you cannot be noticed far away. The circle of awareness is basically the same thing. It's like, you know, how far into the area around you, or also the time in front of or behind you, do you still notice? Like, and you know, if you're using binoculars, you can watch deeper into the forests, as if you have like, you know, sunglasses and a hat on, and you know, or maybe you're in your mind somewhere deep in thoughts, and like you're maybe full of adrenaline or something, then your awareness might be, you know, really somewhere else.
Listening to a podcast.
Well, like listening to a podcast, you can do it on one ear. Like I listen to a lot of podcasts, so but I always only use one ear.
Okay.
So I have the other ear open.
Okay.
And I'm, you know, like listening to podcasts, because, you know, a lot of podcasts you can also have as video, right? So, and I'm like thinking like, why watch the video? Like it's made to work as an audio, and then you can listen to it while you know, sit on the bicycle, or, you know, go for a walk, or, you know, do some woodwork, or, you know, do whatever chores where you maybe need your eyes and both hands for. So I think podcasts are quite practical in that sense, and it doesn't block out everything else, so you can still use your eyes. And
Yeah.
so so this circle of disturbance is like then like when you know, it's a bit, you can compare it to like when you throw a rock in the water and you get these like waves that appear, ripples, and if it's really windy they go more in one direction, and if it's raining they disappear faster, or if it's really windy they disappear faster and are mixed and cannot be seen. So that means also when you're walking in the forest and it's a windy, rainy day, you don't need to be so super silent, right? Because your noise and movement is camouflaged. You know, everything else is moving, so your movement is camouflaged. Your smell is maybe camouflaged, at least in the direction where the wind is coming from, right? So the wind can help you to move your circle of disturbance, you know, away, right? So when that means when you are aware of these two circles and you walk with the, let's say you have the sun in your face and the wind in the back, then you know that, okay, whoever is there can notice me really easily, right? Because my smell and my sound is being carried there, and they have the light shining at me, you know, so it's like, and the other way around. But if you're having the sun in your back and the wind in your face, then you're more likely to get closer to some other animals, let's say. So when we are thinking back to our, you know, ancestors who are running after the rabbit, like, you know, when you're running, your speed is going up. That means your circle of disturbance is going higher. You're creating more movement. You may be creating more sound because you cannot avoid every noisy branch. You might like make some noises, and so you're louder. You have more movement. And your circle of awareness is also going a bit down because you need to be focused on your footsteps. You can't like, you know, stop and listen every now and then. So your circle of awareness is going down. And like when you put yourself in this situation, like let's say you're, you know, walking in the night in the middle of the forest, it's pitch black dark, and you know there are wolves around, and you have no headlamp, you have no defensive means, you know, you're alone, like you automatically slow down and try to listen and, you know, smell everything, and your senses will become automatically more active because you need to notice the danger, or you at least want to notice. Ideally, like you need to also. It's, by the way, nice, you know, like the want and the need conflict can be a nice bracket to open also. But so to survive in this situation, you need to notice the danger before the danger notices you, right? Or you also need to notice the opportunity, let's say a food source, before somebody else notices it and takes it away, or before the food source runs away, right? So I've been thinking this through, and I'm wondering, like, is it really so? And so far I think like, yeah, it is really so, like that to survive in nature, the only place on earth, we need to have our circle of awareness ideally all the time bigger than our circle of disturbance. There are these exceptions. Maybe, for example, we go running after a rabbit, right, where we are taking a risk of having our circle of disturbance go bigger and awareness go smaller. But like this these disturbances, like, well, maybe I'll give another example. There are kind of these kind of exceptions where we still, with our disturbance, become part of the baseline. So let's say wildlife knows that humans are moving on this trail in the national park. Wildlife just knows it. So that's part of the baseline. This trail is part of the baseline. The people with their disturbances, they are moving through there. So they know this, and then they stay away from those areas, right? So that also not means that if you're veering off the trail and you be really careful and silent and stealthy, especially with your smells, then you have a much higher chance to see something. And I think the same goes, like, no matter if we are living in the city or if we are, wherever we live on the planet, is like our individual circle of awareness and circle of disturbance. They determine also what is a healthy speed for us to live in. Right? When you're moving so fast that you cannot breathe through your nose anymore, then you won't smell through your nose, right? If you slow down and you can breathe through your nose again, or you train that you can run and still breathe through your nose, then you can, still get the sensory information through the nose. Yeah. And now we have a lot of knowledge deep into space, deep into the oceans, but in comparison to the disturbance we are causing, like when we look at the disturbance we cause in the oceans, we are discovering places that we haven't seen yet, and we see there's already some microplastic and some rubbish there and some pollution there, right? It's like, so the circle of disturbance in the moment is also like usually bigger than the circle of awareness, and I think that is also something that we can use as our personal, let's say, measure. And of course we might not know how big our circles are really are, right? But it pays to slow down. It pays to walk upright and have the eyes on the horizon and not just on the ground. Yeah.
We could think of the circle of awareness and disturbance also in an individual sense and as a collective sense. Like if you consider someone living like a city, basically, it's a big sort of disturbance into the natural world that we create together collectively, and individuals within that city therefore are challenged by that to actually understand, to be aware of the natural world, because we've already sort of run over it, and we're
and still this natural world is still the neighbor, right? It's still part of it. It's still also the ants that might walk in front of the house and we don't notice. Yeah. Right. So it's like, it of course works as a community. It works individually.
Something that you've said you would want to evoke in people through your work is questions, and a lot of what
and smiles.
And smiles. Smiles are also important.
Yeah.
Those are.
Yeah. Like imagine, like you see somebody doing something and you just walk away like, like this, just with a question mark in your, but when you walk away like, when you have a smile with it, with the question mark, that makes you, make maybe the question stick with you, and it's you have some sympathy and not just
it's definitely, when you're in the business of saving the world, I guess it's easy to have a flavor of nihilism, or become a bit cynical with everything. So smiling it's rarely a bad bet.
and especially if it's honest. Like a dishonest smile is a bad bet. Like this, selfie smile, if the smile is not, if you don't mean it. Which is actually like I read the other day I heard it in a podcast that, like, that when you smile at people, you have like the other one has the automatic unconscious response of a smile. like there is some we can connect and associate with the smile. It's something that we know what it feels like, and we're like, this person is smiling, you know. It's like, so just by smiling and, you know, greeting other people, you can kind of create a positive shared experience.
Definitely. Yeah. Smile. Yeah. But coming back to the your work evoking questions, and also I think you've said to challenge narratives that people carry. One question regarding also, you mentioned our actual needs and wants bracket is the question of what is enough, and having that as a tool in finding our place in the ecosystem.
Yeah, like I learned this question by asking, like, somebody, what are your top 3 questions? Like top 3 questions right now in life, or in general in life, questions that you carry in you for a long time, or a question that you really are wondering about right now, like kind of what are at the top priority, the top 3 questions. And I've been like, this is actually one of my top 3 questions, is what are your top 3 questions? And I know it's like a interesting question because it sounds so small talky, right? It sounds like, hey, you know, what's your favorite color, right? What are your, you know, favorite or top 3 questions? But when you think about it, like, you know, you might actually need to really think about what are actually my top 3 questions, like, and it can go really deep and very personal. So, and there are like these 3 levels of questions. There's like level 1, level 2, level 3 questions. So like a level 3 question is like, you know, what color is your shirt, right? Something that you can easily answer. Yeah. So what's your name? You know, easy questions. Level 2 question is like you know, question where you have to think, where you might need to ask someone else. You know, it's like like the first one is actually level 1. Like level 3 is kind of the highest. Yeah. So kind of the difficulty, the complexity, also the complication, they go kind of up. And so like a level 1 question, you don't mind being asked that often, right? When you're on a conference, like you hear the question, what's your name? You hear it all the time. It's like, yeah, it's an easy question. But like, you know, being asked, like, you know, like a level 3 question, something where you really have to think about, you know, not just like think about and ask someone else, but where you might like, you know, like a level 3 question might stick with you for your life, right? It might be a question where you don't have an answer, and where it takes like years and a lifetime to answer, if you can even get there, right? It might be just a question that is there to guide you, and you don't even expect to find an answer, but it's like, it's always there, right? So, and I'm very interested in these level 3 questions. Like, what are the, you know, this is for me like the top 3, like they're usually all level 3 questions. So when I ask for like, what are your top 3 questions, you know, that's almost like a level 3 question in itself, even though it sounds so small talky. And the level 3 questions, basically, you know, when you think about like how mentoring works, you know, mentoring works not by telling somebody what to do, but by asking the right questions in the right moment, you know, to support the natural growth of this person. And it requires you to know this other person, to know when is the right moment, when is the right time, what is this person passionate about, so that I know to ask questions that support the passion of this person and not my own passions. So when I'm like, you know, asking a level 3 question, you know, I should really know that this is a good moment in your life to be asked a level 3 question, because the level 3 questions you need to ask, like, use very carefully. You know, they can do so much, like, I guess even harm, you know, if asked in the wrong moment. Yeah. Or that they are not taken serious at all. So, you know, it's really a difficult one to me to ask this question, like, what are your top 3 questions? But anyhow, a lot of these answers that I get, they then become like, you know, questions that I'm adopting. That I'm like, that's a good question. I will hijack that one. I will take that one. Take that too in my life. And of course, I'm not taking the question away from the other one. That's a nice thing. You can share questions. So they're there for everyone. And like somebody said, like, what is enough? And to me, it's like, yeah, that's a good question. What is enough? And also, like, what is too much? It's kind of similar question. And so I have, like, in my top 3 questions, I have, like, the number 1 is like, what are your top 3 questions? And then number 2, I have, like, 2 candidates. Like, one is like, what is enough? And the other one is like, what's next? Right? And then, like, on the 3rd level, I have, like, lots of candidates. So but this, like, what is enough question is, like, to me is something that is, like, helping in so many situations, right? You're, like, at a flea market and you see something really nice and you feel like, wow, I didn't even know this exists, and then you think back to yesterday and, like, did I miss this yesterday? Is it actually enough? Like, does my yesterday provide the answer to, is it enough not to have this, right? Even though I might, really like it now. And this, what is enough, is like, it's enough to have our needs covered. The needs, the 6 survival priorities, that is enough to have them covered. When we are going beyond this, then we are very easily going in the direction of wants. And it's easy to know what we actually need, but it's not always so easy to know what we can actually want, right? Like, we can dream of being able to fly without an aeroplane, right? We can dream of, like, jumping off a tree and just flying, and we can dream that. And maybe we can want that, right? But actually we cannot really want that, because this is not in the nature of, like, this is the natural reality of the human body and the gravity on this planet. They don't allow us to have this wish that we want to fly. It's like, we can want it, but, like, we can't want it so badly that we actually try it, right? Because it won't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's outside. It's out of bounds, basically.
Yeah, it's out of bounds.
Yeah.
And in the same way, like, when you're, like, again, looking at this question, what is enough, and looking at what are my needs as a nature-connected being, want it or not, right? Like, the world is ecocentric. Even if you are egocentric, the world is ecocentric. So, can I want to fly for holiday? Sure, you can want it, but it's kind of out of bounds, right? Because of, it will eventually cause you and others suffering. And it doesn't even help to have, like, hydrogen-powered planes for that. Because it's like, taking your time away for dealing with real needs, for example, taking care of your neighborhood, right? So, like, now we have the situation that, not long ago, like less than 200 years ago, if you would go to live in America, you would say goodbye to your village forever, right? You say, like, okay, I'm off to America, and nobody would expect that you'd come back. It was not really an option. It was expensive enough, to collect the money from the village to get you this one ticket on the ship to America. And, despite all the risks, like, the likelihood that you would come back, was very slim. So now if you go to America, you can do that in a weekend, right? You can say, I spent the weekend in New York, right? I'm going to America. You wouldn't, And, like, now, like, we end up having, do you know somebody who's living on another continent? Like, family?
Not family, but people.
Yeah? Do you, like, close friends?
Yeah.
And you're in contact with them?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know family members who might have other family members? Or do you have friends who have family members living abroad in another continent?
I believe so.
Yeah, so
Those
like,
are in the favor.
And, like, it used to be that our families was our neighborhood, right? It was the village, you know. It was like the people with who we want to be most connected to. It was like also easy, and you know, like you couldn't even choose not to be connected to them because you just simply live in the same village, and you're sharing the same well and the same, I don't know what, tools and spaces. So family used to be neighborhood. Now we have family all over the place, and we want to stay connected to the family, right? It's like it's deep inside of us. We are like, you know, connected to our family already, and we want to keep this connection because, you know, this connection is like somehow, you know, it's like connection gives us something, you know. It's like nature connection. It's kind of addictive without side effects. And so we want to stay connected with the family, and now we need, you know, a lot of resources, energy, and time to stay connected, to, you know, move stuff around, right? To send ourselves like Christmas presents, and also to communicate, right? We need, you know, the whole internet infrastructure, what we need for that, the satellites, it all needs resources and energy. And then also, if we want to see each other sometimes for Christmas, you know, we need to move around. And we feel like, yeah, it's very justified because it's family. Like, you know, it's not a pleasure flight, it's family, you know. But we kind of argue that it's a necessity. We need to use these resources. It's not a choice. At the same time, we are disconnected locally. Like the place where connection really, really matters, where family used to be in the neighborhood, that is the place where we are now disconnected. And that is the place where we could actually have meaningful connection in terms of like, you know, being able to help and support each other and see each other and share, you know, good and bad with each other on a daily basis, and have meals together, which we really cannot do with the family anymore because family is not the neighborhood anymore. So, like, circle of awareness, circle of disturbance, put it on that picture, right? Or also like the question of what is enough, right? Like, is the enough thing, is it a need or is it a want, right? We want to have people with who we feel connected. Does it need to be the family, or can it be the neighborhood, right? So like a lot of these questions, they bring new questions, and that's fine. Like I don't think that questions need to have necessarily easy answers to it. Like a good question usually doesn't have an easy answer, but that usually makes it a good question. You know, that's a good question where you really have to think about, where you know, it makes you grow. Yeah. So like, what is enough is I find it a very good question. Yeah.
Another tool you have to sort of navigate all these level 3 questions, or the question of what is enough, is and other situations, also survival situations could be even, is this the S.T.O.P tool. And also accompanied with that, you have something called the full moon, full stop. Would you tell us what those are?
Yeah, so maybe like there was a time where I became a father, and I realized like that my, you know, like interest since childhood in survival topics, survival, bushcraft, scouting, anything like wood stuff, like that this was actually a serious thing, not just a hobby, right? Like when I grew up, it was like, oh, what's your hobby? Oh, my hobby is survival, right? And at some point, and then I became a father, and had just studied at university, and like then I realized that, hey, actually it's now it's like time to actually grow up, right? Because as a father, like my role is to teach survival to my offspring. That's like parents' role, is to teach survival to the offspring, and I have no clue how to do that, because the survival that I know how to do in the forest is not something that I can just take with my child. I can't just say, okay, now we go live in the forest, because the child's survival would still be affected by, you know, the bigger picture reality, like the modern human experience of, you know, aeroplanes and pollution and weird habits and hobbies. So and that caused me actually to be really depressed for some time after my child was born. It's like I thought I knew, how survival works, but like suddenly I was like really responsible for someone else. I didn't understand that I had responsibility for others before, but now it was like, something, no escaping from that, no denying that, and I didn't know how to do that. I only knew, the society that I was living in only supported me in teaching my child how to survive in a society that doesn't survive itself. So nothing sufficiently sustainable to be, happy with. And until that time in my survival courses, that's kind of these wilderness survival courses that I was teaching, I was always teaching the use of the STOP tool. So if you suspect that you are in a survival situation, instead of, falling into panic, the STOP tool is something created to avoid panic and give you a plan. And it's when you are in a situation that you are not familiar with and that feels like, crisis, and you feel like panic coming up, you basically have the choice to continue whatever you are doing, which doesn't seem so wise because it brought you into a fucked up situation in the first place. Then you can do something where you have no idea if it will help or not. Just something, do anything, right? That's not even an educated guess, right? It's like, that's like just, chaos. And then you can also stop and try to make sense of it all. And this is what the STOP tool is. Like, it's like the abbreviation, the letter S.T.O.P is stop, think, observe, plan. That's kind of the very short version. Stop, think, observe, plan. Stop for a moment, create an environment where you can think, brew a cup of tea, get out of the wind, seek some shelter, get some comfort. Think, what actually is the situation? Yeah. Is it now my priority to find food as fast as possible, or will I run out of water in 2 days? Yeah. So what really is the situation? You can cope longer without food, but you can't cope so long without water, right? And only because you might see that there's a lot of water available right now, might that still be the case in 2 days or so? Just think about what is actually the situation, what are the priorities to take care of, and then observe is like, what are the options and opportunities? What do you have, right? What are the tools in my box? What do I have available at my disposal? Kind of an inventory. And then P, the plan, is like making a plan, like, and that's then really an educated guess, because of course it might not work out like planned, but at least you have a plan, and next to the plan you had an idea of what else could maybe work, because maybe you worked through some other plan ideas, and then when your main plan doesn't work out, then you can maybe go back to something else. So that is kind of the STOP tool in a nutshell, and that's something that I was teaching in the survival courses. And then I was finding myself in something that I could identify myself for a survival situation. Like, I identified, I have no idea how to survive sustainably. I have no idea how to teach survival to my offspring. My shelter requires like far more energy than what is enough. It has like huge impacts. I'm using fossils like like there is no tomorrow. And I'm stuck in a system that I don't know how to change it. I have like maybe tried a lot of things in activism, but like I don't know how to get, dependencies and impacts of the systems better. And then I started to, for coping with this like panic and depression, I was like, okay, let's use the STOP tool. And I realized, okay, I need to look at it in a different time frame or different scale, and then I developed this to be the full moon full stop. So since then, every full moon I stop for a day. So whenever it's full moon, like no matter if it's Friday or Tuesday or Sunday, I'm stopping, and I'm just stopping. Just creating, like reserving this day just to stop. No plan for that day particular, but like just to stop. Create environment where you can think, observe, and plan. And then over time I added a few things to each of those letters. So stop is also to slow down in general, like and it doesn't actually always need to be on the full moon. Sometimes it's like, you know, whatever convenient day nearby, and I chose the full moon because it's a visible marker. You know, I can see it coming. It's reminding me, like I can look up, oh, it's full moon coming again, you know, and there's a routine, there's a frequent, like a, you know, it's like a tradition, like some, yeah, routine. And then also it's like neutral, you know, it's not like the Sunday, you know, for the Christians, or the Saturday or the Friday for some other religions. It's like the full moon is like neutral of religions. It's also like a natural rhythm. It's a natural phenomena to have the full moon, and it's globally on the same day. So in a way, a very scalable tool that I'm like, you know, think like, wow, what would actually be if the whole world, you know, every full moon we would just stop for a day, you know, roughly, or however long it takes, you know, to stop and
Don't use toasters.
and think and make sense of it, you know, and observe and make a proper plan, well meant. So the so the S is also to slow down, maybe go on strike, but I think stopping and slowing down and creating this environment where you can think. To the letter T, I've added to thank, because gratitude opens the mind to positive thinking, and it's like really good to approach this positively. Like, you know, even if you're in this type 1 survival situation, you can thank, like, I'm still alive, like, you know, something to be grateful for. I'm still alive, I can still stop. Yeah, so thank, and then have some tea, right? It's like this, you know, atmosphere that provides, you know, this thinking space. You know, have some tea, something that you know, something that gives you comfort. Have some tea, do something good to you. And then to the letter O, observe, orientate, haven't really added anything, but to the letter P I've added party and positive and purpose. So like let kind of to let myself be guided by the purpose, right? Kind of the, like there are lots of whats and lots of hows to reach something, but if you don't know what to reach, if you don't know why you're going in the first place, then you can get stuck, right? So to have the purpose as the destination marker, then you're like, that's a nice thing. Like if you're okay with the purpose, right? If you're agreeing on the purpose, then you can be okay with some inconveniences on the way, right? So if somebody says like, yo, no, we need to stop, you know, if somebody tells you like, hey, meat will now be so expensive, right? Or there will be now a meat tax, because meat has a big impact on the climate, or the you know, the habitat and the biodiversity in general, or the water footprint, all kinds of, you know, big footprints. And there's just the tax as a reason to tell you not to eat meat. You know, it's not very motivating, right? If you don't understand why. But if you really understand why, and that it's like in your own interest, and that it's like, you know, a good thing to have a planet to live on, then it's like, oh yeah, I could actually stop eating meat, you know, that would be like an easy one, right? You know, to get you there. So if you're okay with the purpose, you're more easily agreeing on some what's and how's. So this is why I have like P, purpose, as letter P. Then the choosing the positive. Like we know that people who have survived or died in survival situations, from the recordings that they did, like video recordings, diaries, whatever, we know that people who have been in similar situations but didn't believe that they could survive had much worse odds to survive than actually those who equally had no idea if they could do it, right? If they had, you know, they had no better idea if their, you know, hopes are realistic, but if they were hopeful and believed that, hey, you know, we'll be fine, let's just dig into it, right? Not like we'll be fine, let's relax, you know, we'll be fine if we dig into it, you know, and give everything. So this choice of positive also like keeps you going in a much easier way. You know, it doesn't weigh you down as like, you know, being pessimistic or negative about it. You know, if you're like, you know, cracking jokes along the way, you know, it will carry you on, right? So this positive mindset also like, you know, keeps your eyes open, because you're more likely to, you know, be looking out. Yeah. And then of course the plan, like to make a plan, like, and to me that plan is like It doesn't need to be too specific. What I like to do in the plan is to not pick at all the 6 survival priorities at the same time, not to work on everything at the same time, because it can be overwhelming. It's easier to, especially when you go from months to months, is to pick up, some of them and not all of them, and then you are more likely to actually see bigger results, right? Like when you're working on 6 things at the same time, yes, you will have results, but they might not be so visible for you. If you're only picking 2 of them, and you see like, hey, actually I have a result, something that you can celebrate. And what I chose for myself, simply because community is such an important one, right? I said community can always be a backup for a lack of the other ones, right? If you don't have enough food, but the neighbor can share some, and that means you will both still survive. To always, like, when I pick 2 survival priorities to focus on, I make sure that community is always one of them. It's like the bread and butter, right? It's like it's community needs to be there, and it needs the most repairing, our community, our connections. It needs the most fixing, I guess. And that can also be community, with yourself, right? With yourself, building the community with the other 3 kilos of other organisms inside of your body, right? To be in a good community together, like be at peace and be in balance. So it can be like, spending a month to really take care of your own self, that your mind and your body and your soul, that they are like, okay together. So, and then it's like the last part of the P is to party, to actually celebrate the achievement, celebrate that you did another stop, celebrate, the achievements when you look back in the last months, like, what you achieved, and celebrate maybe the community with who you do the stop, because like it's really nice to do the stop together, not just alone, but like, inviting others to join you. And now there's like, I think people in 5 countries that I know of who use the S.T.O.P tool. So, and that's like, also something I'm celebrating, because I feel that like it's a very powerful tool. It really gives like very, very fast, it helps you along very fast. And like compared to demanding change, it will help you navigate what change you can actually do. Right, like, why do I care what the Paris Climate Agreement was if I can do so much more in my own life? Right? Why do I only need to stick to this poor compromise if I can do so much more in my own life? So the individual level, like when we look at the transformation of our society, and when we want to look at the strategies of bringing change and changing us as a humanity, like we can look at bringing change on 3 levels. It's like the political level, organizational, like the companies, organizations, clubs, maybe media also, like, so kind of we can change there. And then it's the individual private level. So the biggest change can happen on the highest level, but it's usually not fast. The fastest change can happen in the personal level, but it's usually not big. So often we want to see the big change because we see we need big change and it's beneficial, and maybe we don't see that it's possible, but like so that's often where we demand the change to happen from the politicians, right? Also we have been grown or raised into a system where this is how we make decisions, by voting every 4 years, right? This is how decisions are made. We kind of outsource the decision making to others and expect appropriate decisions by people who have no idea about our lives, and then we end up with a lot of like outdated compromises. So when we look at the personal level, we can do change immediately. It might not have this big impact, but if like not a single individual goes to a war, there will be no war, right? So it's like it can have really big impact, even if it's only an individual decision. And it's for sure the place that where we can actually see the benefits more easily, but we can understand it's more beneficial for us when we do certain changes. Like, if I I don't need to, you know, if I'm finding out what kind of shelter is actually enough for me, and I can share the kitchen and live in a commune, and you know, like only need to, you know, pay for my room plus a few square meters of common space, and suddenly like I have like, you know, more money available. That can mean that I can work less for money because I can cover my expenses with less money. That means I have more time available, that I can maybe suddenly use some time for gardening. That means that suddenly I might not need to buy so much food anymore. I can, you know, engage myself in some food sharing communities or community kitchen stuff, whatever. And suddenly I have even more time because I don't need to earn the money for the food either anymore. And then I can maybe work and build a muscle power plant or some bicycle trailers, and then I can get rid of the car, and I can, you know, maybe lower my electricity bill, or even like, you know, fuel, you know, pay electricity into the grid, sell electricity into the grid, because I've built some, you know, energy harvesting solutions from recycled material, some low-tech stuff. So it's like, you know, it doesn't really matter where one starts, you know, it will create more time, and the benefits are a lot more visible when you look at it from the personal level than as if you know, trying to wait and expect appropriate decisions from politicians. And yeah, so that's quite interesting tool, and
and ties down or is strongly linked, I would say, with the circle of awareness and circle of disturbance, and becoming more conscious of that stopping, especially the S.T.O. I would say, stop, think and observe, makes you understand your surroundings better and your impact to it also, and then to plan forward how to navigate the situation. These are some social tools, you could say, maybe, or
yeah, very scalable. Food
yeah.
Stop is very scalable.
Yeah. And so sort of idea level tools on how to move towards, how can one start to move towards sustainability and understand one's place in our in the natural world. I wonder if there's some, if you could, we talked about the yurt and the resilience hub and the electricity or the energy solutions here. Do you have some people, considering someone who would be living in a city, for example, and would not be looking to move into a resilience hub in the near future, what would you say would be the best or the first practical things someone like this could do to start moving towards a more sustainable lifestyle and cover their survival priorities more efficiently?
There's one thing is like, the question is like, are we happy with more sustainable, right? For me, like an example there is like, right, we need sustainable, the ability to sustain, we need to take care of that, right? So more sustainable, yes, you can build a super yacht that is less harmful and call it more sustainable. Yeah, and if you're, you know, want to fool yourself like a proper fool, then you call it a sustainable super yacht. Yeah. So there are some things that we really can, you know, skip, right? We don't need to develop, figure out how to produce sustainable spoons. There are more spoons than people on the planet. Yeah. So very easy one is like, you know, have a spoon with yourself, you know. It's like a good reminder, and it's like very practical tool, and you know, have it in your pocket. Like it I don't know, for me it helped me a lot, and it also opens conversations, and it helps you understand like, hey, we don't need to think too much around the corner. Sometimes the answers are a lot more direct than we might think. Then so like, be careful not to mistake more sustainable with slightly less harmful, right? If a rapist is wearing like, you know, some organic lipstick, it's still a rapist, you know. So the next really easy thing is to start the connection with yourself. Like nature connection is the medicine our world needs the most. And if that can be the connection with yourself, that's really the best start. Become aware of why you are. Become aware what is your purpose. What is the purpose you want to choose? What is the purpose that you want to serve? And what is the purpose you need to serve with your life? Right? How serious are you about life? Yeah, is that just like for you a pleasure cruise and you don't care about the rest, what comes after and in between? Or do you want to feel actually really good about yourself? Feel like that you're like that your own personal humanity is coherent with the natural realities inside of you, right? So, and when you have that, all kinds of answers will come to themselves. So and very often I hear that like, well, but I don't want to give up on this and I don't want to reduce. Like, it's something that to me is like a huge misunderstanding that like more sustainable or even sustainable and sufficient lifestyles, that they are perceived as something less, something back into the caves, or first of all, like there is no going back, it's always forward. And then like when you look at, for example, life in bicycle speed and bicycle distances, for some it might be like, wow, why would I go back to that, right? When you take a closer look, it I think it's pretty obvious that if we continue like we are doing in the moment, and not all of us, but still like the ones that have the highest impact, we will end up at bicycle speed and bicycle distances. The last humans around, they will be moving around on bicycles, right? Because there will be no network. So if we don't change, we will end up at bicycle speed and bicycle distances out of a lack of choice, right? If, however, we choose bicycle speed, if we make it a conscious choice to try to build our lives around bicycle speed and bicycle distances, then we have overwhelming benefits from that. Like either we choose it or we end up at it out of a lack of choice, but we will be there no matter what. And I think it's better to do that out of choice, because then we will have benefits and not suffering. So to me, like it's a complete upgrade. To looking into the sustainability is like, it's a complete upgrade. It's like, you have more free time, you have more health, you have more connection, you have more resilience, less dependence. It's a whole lot safer. It's like rounder. It feels better. You understand the life. And it's a lot more peaceful, right? So there's like benefits, and so it's like really those benefits should be the ones that motivate us, not the necessity to change. And maybe it motivates us that it's possible to change, right? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's all there, right? We just need to copy paste solutions that are already in use somewhere else. And then like the list of what solutions we copy paste into our own life, that is then up to you. Like when you feel like, well, my passion is into food, then you can see like, maybe I can build, some, food sharing network to avoid food waste, or I can like look into making my diet more healthy, more like to reduce the impact of the diet. And like while reducing footprints, it's also always nice to look at the handprints. Kind of the opposite of the negative footprint is the positive handprint. It can be like a lot easier to look into making the handprints bigger than focusing on making the footprint smaller. So so let's say you have some apartment, and you can like work on like how to make the footprint of this apartment smaller by adding more insulation, or using the insulation there where you are by wearing it, or like building some small solar radiation collector. Like you can like photovoltaic is one way of harvesting solar energy, but you can also harvest solar energy a lot easier actually than building photovoltaic. Photovoltaic is quite difficult to build by yourself, but gathering solar energy to heat water or to heat air directly is really easy. So that means you have like less, energy that you need to buy in that might be produced and need to be transported from somewhere else. So you can look at this like reducing the footprint.
Should we quickly explain what is photovoltaic?
Like solar electricity.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like getting electricity through solar, not getting heat or like hot water or hot air through solar, but getting solar electricity.
Yeah.
So normal
voltage.
Photovoltaic.
Voltaic.
Yeah. So like the normal solar panels, most that you see, they make electricity. Most of them that you see. Some of them, when you look closely, you actually see that they are solar collectors that make hot water for the house or make hot air for the house. And they are quite easy to build yourself from recycled materials. So anyhow, so you can also then look at, okay, I can reduce the size of the footprint or the various footprints of my life, of my shelter, right? And then you can also look at, okay, maybe the way to increase the size of my handprint is to make this shelter or those resources, the infrastructure that is available for me, make it available also to others, right? So changing, like increasing the size of your handprint can mean to help others decrease the size of their footprint, right? Like, I have this kitchen here, I have this washing machine here, we can use it, and you can put stickers on the door. I have an electric drill that you can borrow. I have like, a list of books, and maybe make it like an electronic network. So you can have this, like if the idea of a resilience hub, living is like appealing, but the obstacles seem too high, right? You have your friendship, you have your circles, you have your hobbies, you have your work, everything in the neighborhood, and you don't really want to move away from whatever neighborhood it is. You can also just create a resilience hub where you are. And that can be like starting by meeting one neighbor and starting to meet with another neighbor or with the friends or the families. And one thing I really recommend to get people on board and excited is a thing called the week. Yeah, the week.oo. It's like you agree with those people to meet 3 times within 1 week for about 90 minutes. And in these 90 minutes, there is like, when you look at the week.oo, you find access that there will be 3 movies. And on the first session, you watch 1 movie and then discuss it. And then you watch the second movie on the second and discuss it. And the third is like, do it again. So, and the first movie is basically explaining kind of the situation of our world. It's kind of depressing sometimes. For many people, it's like, whoa, I didn't know it's that bad, right? And the second, and it's always the same people, right? So you get to know each other and you discuss and talk about what you see and how it makes you feel and so on. The second movie is explaining kind of how did we get into there, so that you understand kind of the mechanisms. And the third movie is like, if you've heard of the theory U, is like going down. Second movie is like understanding what happened, and the third movie is like the one where you understand like how we can get out of this. And that is a very nice way because to get others on board, because then you're operating on the same why, right? You're sharing a purpose, and we like to surround each other or ourselves with people who believe what we believe. So if we like have the same starting point, and that can be like, just don't watch it alone the week. One more person is enough, and that can be like family, it can be friends, it can be people in the neighborhood, it can be work colleagues. I would say it's not that suitable for under 18-year-olds. Yeah, it's I like that, and I've been hosting the week also again and again now, and will continue to do so because it's very powerful. So I think there are like many steps that might appear small, but they are actually big. So like that people can do in their own lives. A lot of them have to do with connection. A lot of them have to do also with like, you know, like this connection with yourself really is like, you know, spend time outside. If it helps you with the nature connection, many people, it's like often nature starts outside, so it's like easier to like, you know, just sit and watch the clouds and try to understand the clouds, after ask questions like, why is there today a cloud like this, and then you find knowledge, you know, you do some research. And nature connection can, you know, it's not only this mystical thing, you know, it's like, it's when, you know, you meet someone at the bus stop, have seen first time, you don't have any connection really, right? You meet the person same time again at the same bus stop again, and you know, it's like first time you meet, you throw a little threat, right? It's like a Spider-Man, like a little threat. It's like, okay, you have this connection, you know that you have seen, especially if you have greeted each other, you know. So like greeting is a first very small element of connection, is greeting and greeting and gratitude. But then you have like when you have greeted and you have some connection, and next time you see like this threat is growing stronger, right? You have seen again, and maybe you notice that like, oh, it's not looking so happy today, you know, something on her mind or his mind, you know, and you start to be empathic. And maybe third time you see, and again, and then you feel like maybe it's, you can say hi, you know, or I say like, hey, last time I saw you didn't look so happy, everything okay, you know, and then you start to grow this connection, and eventually these connections are like strong as ropes, and you know, even if some threads are breaking, the connection won't break. So like working on this connection is like maybe the most important thing to do, and then everything else will follow. Yeah,
Nature connection, what it comes back to.
yeah, like when we solve nature connection, you know, we will solve climate change on the side, we will solve poverty on the side, and wars and inequality, inequity, whatever like we find inconvenient, we will take care of that. Some work and some effort, and it really is like also helpful to gather knowledge, you know, when you look at the clouds, it's like, you know, really understand them, you know, like not just like look at them and oh, it looks like a crocodile, you know. But it can be, you know, it's like, oh, last time I saw this cloud, it looked like a crocodile, and you remember this moment, and you know, the air and the feeling in the skin. And but it's really also useful to then like, you know, learn about clouds, because then next time you see it, like, this is like a cumulus nimbus clouds, and I know that when this forms, the weather is probably going to be like this soon, right? So you have some more connection to the, you know, the bigger picture, right? And clouds are really good for that. Birds are really good for that, also.
The weather is really important. I remember reading a book from, I believe, 1980, and there was a whole list of these telltale signs from nature, from reading the clouds to like how fish move in the water, to I think one of the clear signs in that book for that the weather is going to be colder in Lapland is that when reindeer rise on just their back legs, and these kind of things where like, I don't know what's the percentage of people who would actually, you know, have an experiential connection to this some of these kind of signs to understand the weather in comparison to watching the news in the evening. Like, we're quite distant from things like the weather is a really cool phenomenon, and sort of pathway to understand causes and effects, or the sort of synchronicities in nature. And it's not too long ago where we didn't actually have someone just in the evening telling us through the television or the radio.
I find it sometimes even difficult to get access to proper weather map.
Yeah.
Like I was when I was in the wilderness guide courses, in the first ones that I was in 2005. Like when we went on the like a longer trip, we would have like a paper, for every day we had like one A4 printed paper map of Europe. Yeah, just black and white paper map of Europe. And then like twice a day we would listen to the like broadband radio. Like we didn't have internet or smartphones, so we just like listen to the broadband radio and hear the sea weather report. So where they put the maritime weather and they would tell like wind direction, air pressure, and wind speed and temperature. So, and then they would say like all these stations, and we would like make our own weather map. You know, okay, same air pressure there, so we connect them with one line. And then we know, okay, there is a low pressure area, the center is somewhere over here. We have a high pressure area, the center is somewhere over here. And we know that the wind direction is like this in this moment, in this area. We know that the whole thing is moving this direction. So we could just, with this combined with their own observations and own measurements, like, you know, what is the cloud cover, what is the what kind of rain or sun do we have, like what kind of clouds, how dense they are, like the sky is covered with clouds, what are the temperatures, what is the air pressure here. We could really like, you know, place ourselves in this map, or actually, you know, put the timing of the map right with our location, and then make predictions for the next 3 days. And they were like surprisingly precise. And like now it's like, when I went to the Finnish Wilderness Guide School, we didn't learn meteorology there. I was like, whoa, what? We don't learn meteorology? Like, but of course it's like mostly like day trips with tourists where you have like, you know, it's a nice one. Like Wilderness Guide is like the education program here in Finland. I found it was like really obvious that the idea was to create GDP providers, you know, people who contribute to the GDP growth. That was like mainly the idea, not to have actually a wilderness guide, but to have a professional, you know. Now, that's interesting. Weather is good one.
Yeah. I think we have a pretty good idea now, or we've talked quite a lot about what is our state in the world, and ways of moving towards sustainability and thinking about sustainability here. Is there something relevant that you feel like we haven't talked about that you would like to still bring up?
Like somehow like this angle of activism is like something that I'm not even liking the word very much, because for me it's just like living and sharing privilege. And sharing perspective, or privilege of perspective. So like I feel that when I work, you know, similar as like, you know, this using the S.T.O.P tool, teaching it in the survival courses, and then using the S.T.O.P tool, applying it to my own life, not just on this one particular situation, but applying it month after month. Like there's also a different scale to what the wilderness guide is doing. So as a guide, you know, if I have a group with certain abilities or limitations, and I need to find a place where we can cross the river, I need to find a place where everybody can cross the river, right? Or with the tools that we have, we can also, you know, if everybody is a fit climber, like we can cross the river where the bank is steep on the other side. Like if everybody is a good swimmer, you know, we can cross the river where it's deep, right? And if everybody has like a dry suit, or if we have like, you know, climbing ropes, then we can also pull up somebody who is sitting in a wheelchair on the other side, you know, build some rigging and then help this other person up. So according to the needs of the group and possibilities of the group, I need to find a way that is possible for us to go. So when I take this same kind of own purpose, right, my role as a guide in that situation, or bridge builder, like building these kind of bridges between the, you know, if somebody in the group says like, no matter what, I don't want to get wet feet, it's like you hardly, you know, if you don't build a boat, you cannot, or a proper bridge, you cannot cross the river with like not getting your shoes wet, right? So like wanting to not get wet shoes is like not something that can be wanted in these circumstances. So I need to kind of match what the group needs, or well, what the group wants, what the group actually needs, with what the group actually can want, right? With the natural realities, right? So, and when I then take the same step and look, okay, what is the wilderness of our planet? What is the group I'm living with? I'm moving on this planet with, the rest of the human society, I feel like, whoa, there's a lot of bridges that need to be built here. And how do I do this? You know, like it's really difficult, like to you know, like I can't just, you know, live my life and share my experience, because whatever I do, it might not be appealing, or it might even feel like insulting for others to, you know, read or watch what I'm doing. It might not be inviting to start thinking themselves. So like I need, like, you know, change happens easiest from within. If somebody tells you what to do, it's not so tempting to do it. If you, however, you know, want to do something, then you're very tempted to do that, obviously, if you see a benefit in it. So when I think about the activism angle, like, you know, sharing this privilege and the perspectives, as I, like you said, like I you know, I want that people have, like, you know, walk away with a question mark and a smile. Like that's somehow almost the limit of how far I can go with activism. And I have a background in very pushy activism, like, you know, where I would, like, you know, like you know, hang on ships and hang under bridges with a big stop sign, you know, like you know, stop GMO, stop this or stop that. Not to stop, but like, you know, or like basically saying like this company is bad, this company is bad. Like, you know, it's like very pushy, applying pressure, and of course, like, very often that works, because then the companies, they change their ways, or governments change their ways because the pressure is getting inconvenient, but not because they want to change really. You know, it's not a motivation from within. So like that's, yeah, somehow where I've somehow changed the way I see myself as an activist, like in it's like really offering hands, offering perspectives, leaving some question marks behind. And I like doing that in the unlikely places. So I used to be active on Facebook, but, you know, there I found myself in the likely bubble where I would find myself in, right? It's like surrounded by others who are believing the same, and we are throwing, you know, like, yes, this is bad, and we talk about others that are not in the bubble. So now I've moved completely to LinkedIn, this professional network, and inside LinkedIn, like when I talk about like this online activism, or it's again nature connection, right? I want to connect with people, not talk against or about people. It's like really I want to connect with others who are living in very different other bubbles. So that means connecting with people in the super yacht community, people who produce, like, you know, crazy fast cars or private jets, or luxury holidays, luxury real estate, like luxury. It's not luxury, right? Like it's not really luxury. So I'm connecting in these areas because I want to understand what are their possibilities, what are their purposes, what are their motivations, what are the questions that they are asking themselves, how aware are they? You know, basically, if you want to build a bridge, you know, how does the terrain look like on the other side where you start building the bridge, right? And somehow, like, that's where that is something that is still part of my life a lot.
I think that's a goal for activism to leave people with a question and a smile is a beautiful one. I think that could be a good intention for many people looking to that like you said, that the change happens from within, and like asking questions and living on a positive note is probably.
And it's really
healthy.
easy to blame and shame.
Yeah.
It's really easy to blame and shame. It's really easy to be angry and really easy even to hate, you know, others for their behaviors. And it's, once we understand, you know, why somebody is doing things in a certain way, why are they saying or thinking or not saying or not thinking some things, like, it's easy to forget that we would say exactly the same things if we had their same biography, right? So like the kind of the behaviors we are blaming ourselves for, or even ourselves, like each other and ourselves for, like very often they're like things that happened to us. They developed over time. They were even in place before we were born, right? Like air travel and holidays already existed before we were born, right? It's not a bad thing that our generation, that we created, we humans who are alive today. And also like a kind of a history or status quo where we thought like GDP growth is like the only thing that matters. This is, or that we measure wealth in money, or that we measure wealth in I don't know what, like life expectancy, right? Like that is something that we inherited, and we can't blame ourselves for what basically our people did before we were born. We just need to, we can blame ourselves if we are not trying to figure out how to deal with it. If we want to really actively turn a blind eye, then that's something we should be ashamed of. And again, like not each other, just ourselves. Like, yeah.
And the building bridges mentality. You mentioned the super yacht community, and this is actually a community that you've been in touch with. And many people might think that this is a community that would be looked down upon by someone from like the low tech perspective, but also like seeking to, like you said, seeking to understand and building bridges and like.
Like it's really interesting community, like this, the super yacht community, because it's a relatively small group. Like so compared to, let's say, global shipping, right, the emissions are like really small. Like a lot more impact has like the 90% of the products that we don't actually need. Right, 40% of global shipping is transporting fossil fuels, right? So that's like that's where to actually really look at, right? Of course, like the super yacht is like so outrageous, right? Because like the emissions per person are really high. So you have like few people who are like so insane money rich, not happiness rich, like money rich, who like have slipped into societies and bubbles where you kind of need to have a super yacht, otherwise you cannot have privacy, right? You cannot have like a holiday without paparazzi with your family. You cannot relax, and there are like a lot of arguments inside the community that are like for the community. Like you have arguments like, yeah, but those people like that they do so much good for our planet. Like think of how many companies they are boss for. If they cannot have time off to think about what they are doing, like imagine where that would go. So we it's easy to find a lot of reasons for those super yachts. Also like that they transport wealth to poor communities. It's like yeah, for sure there are arguments, and there are some super yacht owners who provide their super yachts when they are not on board, which is most of the time, right, to use for scientists. That kind of things are happening, and a lot more yachts nowadays, they are like becoming these kind of explorer yachts, so that you can have a submarine on board and go into the icy waters, and it's like not just this like Bahamas thing, like sunny beaches also. But of course they're like totally outrageous, and there will never be a sufficiently sustainable super yacht, and people inside this community know this, right? It's like they know that they have a reputation issue. They know that they are same with the Formula One, these racing cars. They argue that like, well, but we develop technology that is beneficial for the rest of the car industry, right? We are developing like more efficient engines, lighter materials, and so on, better, So the super yachts do the same. Like, we have like, a lot of money available, so we experiment with like, regrowing fuels, like, and we experiment with new hull designs and new materials, and that will be beneficial for the rest of shipping. Similar arguments. still like there will never be a sufficiently sustainable super yacht, and who does actually really need it? You know, when you look at the 6 survival priorities, already if you use money you take a detour, already if you use electricity you take a detour, and if you need an aeroplane or a private aeroplane even to, you know, fulfill your need of whatever misinterpreted happiness, then you really have actually a problem. And they have a certain level of awareness that they actually do have a problem, but they don't know how to get out of it. It's really tricky, because like the companies that build the yachts, they employ, you know, is it a bad person who is like, you know, painting ships in a shipyard and feeding their family? Is that a bad person? It's just like a job that they might not even like, but it's like, you know, what can you do? You need to do something, you know, have this family. So there's like a lot of little cogs in the wheels in the, you know, whole gearbox. So it's a tricky one, and at the same time there is some development. And for me, it's like when I'm interacting with this community, I want to know, I want to learn them, and, you know, leave some question marks and some smiles. You know, like I'm happy if this community genuinely asks this question of themselves: what is enough? Right? Like, and that's the same with car manufacturers. Is it enough to maybe build as few cars as possible? Is it enough to get together and not compete with each other, have like the big car manufacturers, and is it better to then like you know, build like very simple models together that, you know, are made to, that they can be recycled and very modular, and that way like free also a lot of labor, you know, because of course these big companies like the big car manufacturers, they are binding a lot of workers. It's like people who we desperately need in the creation of permacultures. You know, people who are needed to build local communities, and they are busy building cars. It's like, yeah. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think the message of just understanding each other is really like connected to nature connection. We understand the natural world and our relationship to that, but also each other, and how, like you said, the biographies of each other, and that as a tool to building communities and constructive ways of interacting.
Yeah, like acting based on the common ground.
Yeah.
Not on the differences. And that can be really tricky. Like imagine like, you know, our neighbor Russia would come and invade Finland. What would be the most common reaction? Would be fight back. Is that the most beneficial way to react to the situation? I doubt.
I think we have a pretty good package here.
Yeah. And it can go on and go on.
Yeah,
but,
I believe so.
At some point.
Maybe in the end, you could also, the Nomad Town is an open invitation for people wanting to learn, but you also hold courses here.
Yeah.
So if there are people wanting to go deeper into what we've discussed.
Okay, so one opportunity is check out, I have still, it might change, I still have a YouTube channel. If you watch the YouTube videos, put the resolution really low, less data being transported. A lot of videos, they work with audio only.
Okay.
So there is some more that then you don't even need to travel, then it's the information is already there. And then there is some information on the nordicbynature.net webpage, but that webpage I'm actually moving in the moment to a lower impact volume, like making it all smaller and using different provider. And yeah, so what is there to know? So about courses, I do, or wilderness guiding, I do anything from 2 hours to 2 weeks in pretty much any season if I'm around. for me it's always like striking a balance between like what I need to do, what I want to do, so if I can get by without having to earn money, that's good. From the money perspective, it's nice to have big groups. From the personal experience, it's nice to have small groups. Best, of course, would be like well-paying small groups. I've been thinking to offer like some programs like for ultra high net worth customers, like offering for the highest bidder, and then like finance a whole year of activism with that money, like and some nice projects. What else is there?
There will be links to this week, your website, your YouTube channel.
Yeah, hashtag full moon full stop.
Yeah.
Good to remember. And then courses, like usually everything that I do is like tailor-made. So there's always a meeting with the customer or participants before, like often on the phone or online, to determine what is the want, what is the need, what are the possibilities. And that can be, it can be happening here. I'm also traveling to places. I give talks, speeches at conferences, lectures. I do sustainability consulting, visiting companies, private households. Also like doing programs at people's cottages. So anything that is like possible for me to reach with public transport and bicycle hitchhiking. So
Huck, Middeke. Dankeschön.
Kiitos, Tuure.
Kiitos. Wishing you and everybody questions and smiles.
Yeah, so what's next?